The more work ethic you have, along with that athletic ability, means you're going to stick around longer. Mm-hmm. The guys that are there at early and stay late, those are the guys that get their pensions. The guys that have the big, fast cars also have a propensity to crash big, fast cars.
Welcome to another episode of the Heavy on Brand podcast. And this is a good one today. It really is. This is someone who I met, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago now, maybe even longer.
I think it was longer. Yeah, I think it's like 7 or 8 now.
Yeah, man, time flies. It was definitely well before COVID. So yeah, we're on the other side. We're closer to a decade now. But I'm so happy to have you on the show. And for those who are listening and for those who are watching, I am welcoming Brandon Leopoldus to the show. And he is, and I'm gonna say a lot of things, but he is a rock star attorney in the sports and entertainment space. And when I say rock star, I mean there's not a person I feel like that he doesn't know, or at least have had some sort of interactions and dealings with. But what I continue to be mostly impressed by is just his knowledge of marketing, branding, business as it relates to entertainment, entrepreneurship, professional athletes, college athletes. I mean, it just spans the gamut, and I'm just so honored to have him on the show, have you on the show, because I just feel like you always, every time we connect, man, you just drop nugget after nugget, and you don't even try. It's just so effortless. And I'm like, this dude, I need to be able to deliver like him. But my friend, welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
I'm good. I appreciate that intro. The best hype man in the business, man.
I try.
I feel the same way about you every time we talk. I'm like, man, I need to remember that. I need to get to a whiteboard right now and get it on there. Otherwise, I'm gonna forget.
Awesome, man. I'll take it. I'll take every bit of it, man. But I also forgot to mention to people that you are actually in the Los Angeles area. So, one thing, not that I had even planned on bringing this up, but glad to know that you're safe with all the wildfires and stuff that was happening some weeks ago, a month or so ago. But I know a lot of people in that area were severely impacted, and you and I had a chance to catch up a bit. And I was like, yo, man, are you good? And you told me like, hey, this is when I know like it's getting real. It's like, if I could see it from my window.
Yeah. I mean, it was literally right over Capitol Records. So right there is Runyon Canyon, and I could see it. Like it was 6 o'clock at night, and you just saw this flame, and I went, oh man, Runyon Canyon's on fire too. Yeah. Like the whole city's on fire. It was wild, but in a town that is unabashedly self-centered, when you have everybody, not because it's cool, but because it was your neighbors that were affected. It's your cousin, it's your aunt, your uncle. It might be your driver or your chef or your trainer. Everybody knew somebody that was affected. I mean, half the city seemed like it was evacuated. The valley was evacuated. And so we're all checking in on each other all the time. And I think after a while, you realize that when they shut down the studios, so people aren't on the roads, that says a lot in this town.
Yeah.
And so it was as hard as it was to see all of the destruction and the loss. It is nice from a civilization perspective, just to watch everybody get rid of all the nonsense in their life, at least for a minute, and take a month to just focus in on making sure everybody else is okay. LA has healed itself. We are all back to being self-centered. But now it is one of those things where we understand you're probably not going to the beach because you got all that stuff from the Palisades seeping on down the hill now. Yeah, and what are you going to do? Because you have to rebuild. And what about these people that are still displaced? There's still that sense of we need to take care of one another that LA typically just hasn't had since I've been here.
Yeah. It was, I know so many people out there, and I checked on as many people as I could remember and could. Yeah. And I feel like the responses were night and day. Either it was people like you, like, hey, I'm good. I know some people that have been impacted. And then other people were just sending me pictures around like people that they knew whose houses were just completely gone.
Right.
And I'm like, good night. Like, this is crazy. This is crazy.
Yeah.
So glad to see and hear everything is okay with you. And one thing that you mentioned, and I've always respected this about you from the very first time you and I met. And I think it's in many ways, one of the reasons why you're just super successful in business is that you actually give a damn about people next to you. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you don't know them. It doesn't matter if you met them for the first time or if you've known them for years. Like, you always show up in a very consistent way. And so to even hear you speak about just kind of everything that was connected to that, and getting back to like, hey, this is how civilized people act. This is how, whether you know your neighbor or not, like, they're still your neighbor, and you want to be mindful and be considerate of their well-being. And so that just continues to shine through, man. It really does.
I appreciate that. That's, for me, I grew up in Colorado. So if you were going to act a fool, you were going to hear about it or you were going to feel it because somebody was going to tell you about it. And I always remember when I was a kid, my dad would always say, look, talk to everybody because the people that people ignore are the ones that have all the information. You just don't know it because you're talking about business in front of the janitor. You're yelling at your spouse on the phone in front of the doorman. He hears all that stuff. And nobody's asking them about it, but they're the ones with all the info. And it's amazing how true that is. The other part is when I was in baseball, we'd have, you'd have big league players that would tell the minor league guys, hey, sign every autograph you can because you're going to put a smile on somebody's face. And he goes, you can take another 10 minutes and be a little late to your lunch meeting, but put smile on kids' faces. They're never going to forget you. They might not know your name, but they're never going to forget that interaction. And that's going to pay off in the long run. And when you heard, Frank Thomas telling that to people, I tell you what, that's a man that really lives that. Every time I see Frank, he doesn't remember me, but he sure makes it seem like it. And he's not lying about it. He's just a genuinely good person to people that he doesn't need to be nice to people, right? Financially, it might not even benefit him, but it does in the long run because he's built a brand of, Big Hurt, Big Frank. Everybody loves him. And there's a reason is because he does things the right way. And so for me, it's, sometimes you have to understand that everybody's life is hard. For some people, getting out of the bed in the morning, getting their shoes on and leaving the apartment is hard work. That it takes a tremendous amount of courage for some people. Other people are running 15 businesses and making billions of dollars. And I tell you what, that's probably hard too, but it's no harder than a single mom trying to get their kids dressed into school and then get to work on time and to the ballet recital and pay the bills and somehow still put food on the table. That's pretty hard too. Yeah. So anybody that has life and you think it's easy, it's probably not. It might look that way, but give people the credit for, making a hard situation look easy. That's a lot of grace.
Yeah, for sure, man. I love everything of what you just said, and it's perfect segue. And it's, really like I want to get into your background a bit. And you kind of touched on it a little bit about where you're from. But kind of tell us a little bit, kind of your upbringing, your involvement in sports and things of that nature. You and I have talked about it before, but I think it's just really cool and interesting. Because I think in many ways I know in many ways, for a fact, keep me honest, like I'm not you, but it has really shaped, your career in a number of ways. So tell us a little bit about how you got started, where it came from, and how you just transitioned into the space that you're in today.
So this is how bad of an athlete I was. Not many sports guys are going to start with how bad they are, but my sister has all the athletic ability in my family. She's 2.5 years older than me, and she was an Olympic level gymnast back in the 90s. So 92 games, 96 games. She didn't go to either one of them, but all of those girls were the ones that would, make fun of me during sleepovers at our house. Wow. And so, you'd see the 96 games and they're on the Wheaties box and they're in all the commercials. I know all those girls. They're all my sister's friends. But it was funny because my parents, either my parents did a great job or I was naive or both. But she would go, we'd drop her off at the gymnastics gym. I'd be wearing my foam hat and plastic cleats and I'd go play, Little League recess for an hour or whatever. And then we'd go down to the Olympic Training Center where my sister was training. She never went to Dallas and trained at Bella Caroli's place, which in hindsight is a good decision. But I'd go down to the Olympic Training Center and wait for her to finish up. And they never told me no down there. So I'm hanging out in the USA boxing gym, just biding my time, or in my Little League uniform, scraping up the USA basketball court, shooting hoops. And nobody's telling me no. I'm just running chaos around this thing, just trying to kill 30 or 40 minutes while my sister's done. And I didn't realize we were different. That was just her sport. So that must be where it is. And when she got to college, she was the number one recruit in the country. And she went to Penn State. And they had the first moment that I realized something was different between us was they had an assembly my freshman year of high school. She was a senior, and it was for her and a guy named Darian Latimer, who was a football player that was going to Oregon. And the whole school had an assembly for these two. And I thought, I don't know why. I mean, sure, they're the only two that are getting college scholarships or whatever, but I didn't understand why those two, that made no sense. Did she win a contest and she really wasn't about all the attention. So that probably helped me not figure things out. But she goes to college. My mom's driving me somewhere later that year. And I'd started to think about where I wanted to go to college, but I couldn't figure out how they just know who all these kids are in America and how does the recruiting work? Like, do they send professors on the weekends to everybody's house. That was the business model I saw, because I didn't know anybody that went to college other than, my sister and her teammates, and everybody got recruited. I didn't ask my parents. They weren't college athletes.
Yeah.
And so when my mom said, have you thought about college? And I said, when did they start recruiting me? And the second it came out of my mouth, I realized, oh, I'm going to have a different experience. I just had to say it out loud. Wish I would have said it out loud in the bathroom, but I said it to my mother, and that's when she either thought I was very dumb or that I just didn't get it. And so for me, I was just a late bloomer. I was a little kid, I'm 15 years old, weighing 80 pounds or whatever. And so, of course, I get cut from my high school baseball team, as one should when you're that size and you have that level of talent. And so I get cut, and for a summer job, I go and I umpire Little League baseball. It was better than working at Wendy's. And I was getting paid in cash, and I got to still be kind of involved in baseball at those same fields I grew up on. And I really loved it. Had no idea what I was doing. I was, here's a rule book, here's your schedule, good luck to you. I didn't know anything about, they're running to third base to start off, and I might as well have done the same thing because I didn't know where I was going either. And I started working higher level games before I got out of high school, and I'm working high school games after high school, right? So I'd leave, my junior year of high school, and then I'd go across town to work the JV game at another high school. And so I start to meet the pro guys that are coming through the AAA town that I lived in, and they're saying, hey, you should go to umpire school. That's great. I don't know what umpire school is. And so I find out about it. It's 5 weeks in Florida, and that's how they figure out who the prospects are and who the suspects are. And we go, I decide that after my freshman year of college to sit my parents down and tell them I'm dropping out of school because I'm going to go pro, which is a very cool thing to say as a 19-year-old. Not so cool in practice, especially when you get released at 24.
Yeah.
But so I ran away and I, joined the baseball circus a bit. And apparently you can yell at me and I can still do my job. So that's, half the criteria. And then I grew into a man, so I could, hold my own against some of these guys. But that's kind of the criteria. Don't absolutely go crazy, do your job and have a little bit of athletic ability. And I hit all those criteria. So ran around the minor leagues for a number of years and had a great time doing it.
That's crazy, man. I always enjoy hearing that story, man. Every time you shared it with me, and it's a one of a kind story.
Absolutely.
Like when you first shared all that with me, I was like, I don't think I've come across anyone that has had that kind of a path.
No,
but it's super dope. So a couple of questions I have is, all right, when you decided to go out and, become an umpire, right, at a young age, like, did anyone say anything to you that was like older, like, hey, like, kid, what are you doing out here? Like, what was that like? Like, because it's just like, yo, you're not used to seeing someone that young out there calling.
Well, the funny part is in the minor leagues, everybody's young. The players, the coaching staff, the umpires, because really what they're looking for from the umpires is they want you for 30 years in the major leagues. So they're not going to hire somebody that's in their 30s, 35 to start out in rookie ball, spend 10 years in the minors to get a chance at the big leagues. So you better be in your early 20s. Like if you're 26, you're a dinosaur out there.
Wow.
And so I was 20 when I worked my first game, and I looked like I was 11. Like I look back at some of those pictures and I'm thinking, who took me seriously? Like I should have left my mask on the bases. Like I had no business being out there. But you stand out in the sun for 5 straight years and you start to look like a catcher's mitt a little bit, and everybody looks a little older and a little more grizzled. So, it grows you up fast.
In many ways, it's like the AAU of basketball, right?
Right. That's kind of a good way to put it. Yeah. There's less money in the minor leagues than AAU basketball.
Right. I mean, but it's like you get people in early, you groom them, you see who's talented, who's not, you take them up through the circuit, and then hopefully it's like, okay, now we get this person placed at a college, and then they're able to get more exposure, and we can give them a shoe deal, or at least promise one now. Yeah. And then now we get them while they're in the pros, and now they have this loyalty to us. That's interesting, man. I never really thought about it. I never thought about it like that. I just had,
and the very similar to AAU is people top out, right? Sometimes that huge prospect that's 12 years old ends up, everybody can jump like him after they all hit a growth spurt,
right?
And he just becomes a normal guy again. And other times people just lose interest. And I'll say to succeed in pro sports at a high level, you have to have a little bit of, I always call it psychopathy. I don't know exactly what it is, but you have to be able to turn stuff off in your brain that affects normal people. Whether it's a pain tolerance. I broke my leg and worked on it for a year because I thought it was going to keep me away from the big leagues. And it was the most excruciating pain I've ever felt in my life. Now I mean, it doesn't seem like it's much of anything because I went through it already. And so my pain tolerance is a lot higher.
Yeah.
But most people they'd break their leg and they'd go, well, I guess I'm done for the year. No, it's give me all the painkillers and tell me how much tape I need to hobble out there. I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And then it's hey, this is a business now. When you leave your house in March and you come back September, October for 2 or 3 weeks, and then you're off to winter ball, you lose all of those connections that you build when you're, say, in college or your early 20s because you're not reliable. You're not even there. You're not in on the Wednesday night dinners or the birthday parties or the 4th of July. You're in Victorville, California with a sewage problem in your locker room, hoping to beat the traffic out so that all the fans can watch the fireworks and you can get out of town.
Yeah.
Like all of that stuff, or you see a pitcher that's got a pitch that day, but they're getting divorced on their cell phone behind the locker room because they haven't been home in 4 months. And their kids don't know who they are and trying to figure all of that out. And then you see those guys that have been lifers, and now you have 40 years of that built up. And where do you hang out? After a game's over and you've been in front of 10,000 people, you don't just go to sleep. There's too much energy. And so maybe you go to the gym. Other guys go to the bar because the only thing open after a game at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night is a bar. Yeah. And so a lot of chicken fingers and a lot of Miller Lights, right? And you start to wonder how everybody ends up barrel chested and, 45 years old. It's chicken fingers and Miller Lights and long bus rides. And so you start to take a look at all of that and you realize it's not for the faint hearted. Everybody likes to see, the bright lights and the TV commercials. What they don't see are those guys getting promoted and relegated back down to the minor leagues. They don't see, the broken bones. They don't see those guys that never get there. And then they retire and they don't have a lot to show for it other than some memories of what could have been. And then some of that what ifs. Yeah. And it's really hard to start over. I started over really at 24. I had the best experience of my life in baseball. I will never say a bad word about it, but imagine being 31. You had 12 cups of coffee in the big leagues. And now you've had that drug, right? Walking out on a big league field, that's a drug. And if you have that taste, you want that taste forever. Imagine getting the taste, knowing that you could do it, but they take it away from you. Yeah. And now at 31, you just kind of give up. And I know a lot of guys that are just working college sports as that's what they're doing for their career now. They're just refereeing college basketball and college baseball. Nothing wrong with that. But I tell you what, my knees are bad enough after 628 games. I can't imagine after 5,000.
Yeah. So you did this for about 4 or 5 years. Sounds like.
Yeah, 5 years full time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. So what was the switch?
It would cost about $2,400 more to keep me the next year than a guy that would probably look just like me and had the same proclivity to yell at dugouts. So they got rid of me and brought him up. They told me that I wasn't, they rank umpires. And so I was ranked kind of in the middle, like I always was. Yeah. And they said, we don't think we're actually going to get to that point to be able to promote you next year. And of course they did that before spring training. They just wanted to get rid of me. And frankly, I'm glad they did. Looking back on it now, back then I was pissed. But
I was about to say, like, how did that feel at the time?
Oh, it's awful. You know that the calls are coming. The Red Sox had just won the World Series. And so hell had frozen over, right? And I was getting ready. I had already started. I had been home for a month. I was getting ready for my promotion to AA. And I knew the calls were coming because I knew guys got called the day before to get released. And I thought, well, I didn't get winter ball, so I'm pretty sure it's coming. But then it got to this point where you didn't hear from anybody for like 12 hours. And I'm thinking, well, maybe I'm skating through this. And I was at 24 Hour Fitness with my trainer. And right before our workout, I went, checked my phone, and I had a number from Michigan, which was where our boss was. And I went out and I said, hey, I think I'm just getting released. So you got to give me a minute. And I called him back. And the best bad phone call I've ever had in my life was Mike Fitzpatrick, who was the director of minor league umpires at the time, said, hey, this is the hardest thing I got to do. And I said, Mike, it's going to be hard for both of us. I know this can't be a good day for you. So just go ahead and get it over with. Yeah. And he tells me what it is. And I go, look, Mike, can I ask you some questions? And he goes, well, we'll give you the written response. This is what, HR has told him to do. I said, no, it's nothing about that. Like, I appreciate it. I go, what do guys do when they get released? And he's thinking I'm going to go crazy. And he's like, the guys do a lot of stuff. They're cops. They still try and umpire a little bit. They do this, they do that. And he's just trying to help. And I said, well, if I want to stay in baseball, will you guys help me? And he goes, well, you have to go back to umpire school, but we already released you once. And I said, okay, well, yeah, but what if I want to do something else? And he goes, okay, we'll help you. He goes, next year, if you want to go to the winter meetings, tell you what, it's on us. He goes, not this year. You need to take some time away. And so I walked outside and I thanked him. And I'm so glad I did. I said, look, thanks for 5 great years. I go, this can't be easy for you. I go, I'm devastated, but you know what? I'm really glad I had the opportunity. Then he goes, you're the only person that's thanked me today. And I go, well, I'm going to hang up the phone and I'm going to curse you out. So
right.
that's going to happen too, sir. But, you get that phone call and the dream ends. The dream's over at that point. And it just takes a while for it to sink in.
Yeah.
And the hard part is the dream it's come and gone. Like you were a couple steps away and it just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, I'd rather have had that happen than still have that dream and the what ifs. There's no what ifs. It's great. Good place to be in.
Yeah. So you have that conversation. You're at a space where you have to start over, right? So what did you ultimately, like, what did you decide to do? Like, what was I won't say the very next step, but
so
it could have been a series of things, right?
Yeah, I guess I started to scout because I thought that's a good life. Yeah. It's a terrible job. Oh my God, I did not like that. Yeah. So I did that for a year. I worked in the front office of the AAA team selling tickets. It was hard to do when you have a bad stadium in a town that doesn't really care about AAA baseball. And, finished off college. That was a good thing to do. And was hounding a guy named Dan O'Dowd, who was the Rockies GM at the time. Because when the Rockies were out of town, he'd drive down to Colorado Springs to watch his farm teams. And every time he was there, I'd be sitting with the scouts, and he'd always be with the scouts, and I'd hound him for a job. And I was an umpire. I was on the field. I know how all of it works. So does everybody else. And he told me one day, he goes, well, look, go to law school. It seems like everybody else that applies for a job that works with us goes to law school. And so I guess I'll just go to law school.
Yeah.
And so I signed up I somehow figured out how to sign up for an LSAT, went to Barnes & Noble, bought a How to Study for an LSAT book. And this has got to be the easiest thing in the world. A little naive, thinking that I just got to take this practice test a few times. And then I walk in and take the LSAT and bomb it. But my undergrad grades were good enough to get me into a law school. And I figured, well, after this first year, I'll just apply to go back to the Rockies and I'll be a baseball lifer. It'll be great. And I ran into a player that I had in the minor leagues who had made a bunch of money in the big leagues and who I had gotten along with. And just ran into him at a hotel in San Diego where I was in law school and stopped by, exchanged pleasantries. And I'm like, hey, are you okay? Because he was hitting like 190, just made 80 million something dollars guaranteed. And he goes, you got a minute? And I was like, yeah. He goes, I'll come back down. Let's grab a soda pop. So we go to the hotel bar and he starts telling me about all of the stuff, right? Man, I'm getting paid all this money, but I'm not doing well, but they have to play me because I'm the highest paid guy on the team. And he starts going through all this. And it sounded just like the emotional stuff that my parents were talking about or my sister was talking about, but different context, right? My parents were talking about how do we afford to pay for her to go to that camp in Michigan?
Yeah.
How, what if she picks the University of Utah? Is that a good school? Pre-internet, we didn't know. And gosh, should we go with this coach or that coach? All of those, it sounded the exact same to me. And I realized, well, instead of going and working for the Rockies, no offense to Colorado Rockies, or I could solve the problems of people that I've been around my entire life, kind of by osmosis, right? I didn't have those same problems. I was an umpire. My signing bonus was $50, but my cab ride was $72. So, right. I mean, that's how I was valued. And so for me, I should have realized I was on the suspect list from day one. The big thing for me was I liked working with these guys.
Yeah.
Just because he got to the big leagues and I didn't, all that meant was that we had a knowledge gap. And I now had the value because he needed the knowledge that I had that he didn't get. And so if I can work with those guys and I understand all the unsaid things, well, then this is going to be a lot more fun in life than me, being a personal injury attorney, not really caring about my job.
No, man, I love that. So that sounds like that was how it started. Like, did you, when you were so this happened before you even got out of law school?
Yeah, this happened like the first
year
month. I think it was the first month or two of law school. Yeah.
Got it. And so was it at that point where you were like, okay, I know, like once I'm done with school, like this is going to be my focus?
I knew that I wanted to be in sports. I didn't know I didn't know what that was. I knew I didn't want to be an agent because if that same guy called me from Buffalo and he said, hey, I'm getting released, my answer would be, no kidding, you're hitting 130.
Right.
Right. Like I'd release you too. My first instinct wouldn't be, okay, let's get you another job. Let's call the Tigers. No, I'd tell you you're hitting like crap. Yeah. Probably not the best role for an agent. And so I don't do any agency work.
Yeah.
But it was, I started to understand a little bit more about, maybe be a union lawyer. Wasn't really my cup of tea, but I enjoyed that. And I was part of the union when I was in the minor leagues. So I understood how it worked, but I didn't want to just do employment and labor negotiations. And then people said, well, maybe you could do intellectual property, right? Trademarks, copyrights, that kind of stuff for athletes. I thought, yeah, that's kind of fun, but it seems kind of limiting.
Yeah.
And, then I thought, well, maybe I'll go in-house and work for a team. Well, I don't want to work really for anybody, especially when I have to go to some air-conditioned, quiet office for 12 hours a day. I don't want to do that. And so you start to realize all of these things that I had an interest in, that I understood from really my time just being around everything.
Sure.
And so instead of going and getting pigeonholed and say, you're just doing the same contract all day long, like you're working in a salt mine. Now I ended up starting my own firm once, which is a bad idea. Didn't know anything about branding, didn't know anything about marketing, didn't know anything about practicing law. It was a bad decision. But as I grew into that iteration, I went to work at another firm. I realized all the stuff that I had learned, but I hadn't put into process yet. And I saw how they weren't doing it the right way for this industry. And so when I started this version of my firm 7-8 years ago, it was, I know exactly what I'm doing now. Yeah. And now I know how to speak to the client. I know how to speak to potential clients, and I know how to get the work done. I know how to speak to those people that work for me and with me a lot easier than I did back then. But frankly, it was just because we do a little bit of everything in this specific space. Yeah.
Yeah. You guys touch a lot of stuff, especially when you're managing the clients that you manage. And I think most people who follow the space or are connected to the space in some capacity, or at least have an interest in it, they get that, especially in today's environment, these athletes, entertainers, public figures, entrepreneurs, even like the mega ones, they have to manage so much. And there's kind of this transition of, okay, being known for the talent that you have and being extremely successful around that, to now becoming kind of this larger than life brand and public figure and everything that comes along with that. What do you feel like, just from your vantage point, what do you feel like is the most misunderstood aspect of that people just don't understand, when it, like, once you are that person, that individual, that now you have to move completely differently, because there's so many, what's the word I'm looking for? There's so many things connected to, like, your brand, who you are, what you do,
right?
The legal side of things, the business side of things. Like, what would you say? And I'm sure it's a ton, but what would you say if you had to boil it down to one or two main things? What's the biggest thing that people just typically misunderstand or just don't get about people who are in that limelight like that?
I would say money. They think, Shaquille O'Neal has all the dollars, right? Good for him. He's earned it. He's, as we lovingly say with one of the trainers and agents that I work a lot with, he's a genetic freak, right? If he was 5'11", nobody's talking about Shaquille O'Neal. No. But that man is the size of a house, and seems to be a wonderful human being. So he's Shaq, and everybody knows who he is. Charles Barkley, same way. All those guys on Inside the NBA are fantastic, right? There's a reason that they're out there, because they're personable, but also they played basketball for a living, right? If they televised accounting, everybody'd want to be an accountant. But instead, we watch sports. And everybody seems to think if you have a jersey on your back, well, you must be rich. Well, I might have more money than you, but my earning capacity is very limited, right? So the NFL, it's 3 years on the average, but I always say cut the 1% out. Forget the Tom Brady's, take every NFL quarterback basically out of the equation. And now you're under 3 years. That means you're not getting a full pension. And frankly, most guys, it's probably 5-6 games, I would bet, where that means you're spending $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 on personal training, food, all of the stuff that you need in the offseason that's non-deductible, right? The Detroit Lions aren't having you in the facility to work out all year long because they have a collective bargaining agreement that says they can't force you to do that. And most people don't live in that city that they're playing in, most. So when you see guys on an NFL roster, you don't have 53 millionaires out there. In fact, you probably have 10 millionaires and 43 broke guys on that 53-man roster. And they're scratching and clawing, just trying to become one of those guys that's a starter and then maybe get a contract that's going to pay them that kind of money.
Yeah.
So it's not that they're bad with their money. It's that they're gambling on themselves. And I can't blame them. I did the same thing, but at a much lower price scale. But if I'm in the NBA, you see 5 guys out on the court. You might have a 6th guy that's pretty good. James Harden was a 6th guy. But you don't think about the last guy in the end of the bench to the number 7 guy unless he's Bronny James, right? Everybody else are just some really tall guys that might have had a moment in the Final Four, but you don't even think about them. Well, a lot of guys are on 10-day deals in the NBA. And if you take a look at the roster of players that play for your favorite team every year, there's more guys than you ever thought had played on these basketball, hockey, football, baseball teams.
Yeah.
And you take a look at how much service time, how many actual games that they were on the active roster for. It's not many. And so I think a lot of times and you'll meet people, I meet former players all the time, but if you meet somebody and they say, oh, I played for the Detroit Tigers, and you go, that's so cool. He's a major leaguer. Yeah. And he's thinking, man, I feel kind of like a fraud because they don't even realize that, all I got paid was my per diem and then 2 game fees. And that's all I got. Well, you got there. Well, getting there doesn't equate to lifelong financial success.
Yeah.
The guys that we know, right, the famous people, they've done really well for themselves.
Yeah.
But you don't see all the blood, sweat, tears, and checks that have to get written just for you to possibly get there.
Yeah. What are you seeing, I guess, from with your practice in your firm, like in what areas do you tend to help clients the most? Because there are so many things that they have to manage and sort through, and so many considerations that we probably just can't even understand as someone who is not in their shoes. But what's like some of the more common things that you just try to help them with as far as like getting their affairs in order, the legal side of things?
Yeah, frankly, it's probably those transitionary periods. Now starts in high school, right? If you're a top 100 high school football player, basketball player, I want to talk to you. And it's not because that there's a lot of legal work to be done. It's because the legal work that we'll do is help you understand what advisors you need and vet those advisors. Because now you're having kids that are 15 years old that are getting hit up by brands on Instagram because they're on that top 100 list. But you don't understand that you have to pay taxes on that income even as a kid. They don't understand that in California, you have to have that money in a segregated bank account that's held in trust. Have to do it. That's just the way the world works out here, right? Other states have similar enough laws, but you just don't know. And parents probably haven't been through it. And even if they had, let's say you played in the league 10 years ago, the NIL world has changed everything. And so for us, it's, hey, if you're a high school 15-year-old, let us help vet and introduce you to those agents or those marketing reps that you might need, the financial advisors, the CPAs, and just the other people that you should know, because it takes that whole team for you to keep your money. And for us, we're brand agnostic. If you say, hey, we already have a financial advisor and we love this guy, we're never going to get rid of him. Cool. Let's still vet him to make sure that he checks out, that he doesn't have, 3 felonies. And let's also, or 1 felony is enough for me to say no. But if you need that tax person, you got to talk to somebody. You're not doing it on TurboTax. You're too big for that now.
Yeah.
And so let's get those people in place. So that way, when you do your NIL deal in college, now we have some legal work to do. Yeah. And now that money isn't going to be that big scary thing, because people typically react to money in 2 different ways. If you grew up with money or you've been around money, it's not that big of a deal, right? But if you haven't had money, it's the biggest thing in the world, because now it's like if you haven't eaten for 3 days and you open up the refrigerator, you eat everything. And rightly so. It's human nature. It's instinct. It's survival. You buy the car, you buy mom a house, you buy dad a house, and they're still married, right? You buy your brother a car, and you don't realize everybody's got to pay for upkeep and taxes on this stuff.
Yeah.
Nobody can afford it. Right. But if we help them spend that money, right, before they actually spend it, and we go, okay, you're getting $100,000 to play basketball at, I don't know, Villanova. Yeah. Let's spend that $100,000. And you always get to the end and you go, okay, well, you didn't pay taxes. Oh man. And now you start realizing real fast, okay, there's a different way to do this. What do you really want? You can buy that car used, by the way. You want that chain? Maybe get the fake ones. The fake ones are great now, by the way. Right. Fake chains are great. They look just like the real thing.
All that you need. All you need right there.
Right. Yeah. Nobody cares about the watch that you have, the car you drive, or where you live. Yeah. If you think about it, you can't name what your best friend drives most of the time. Right. You just can't, because you're too focused on your own stuff. The things you buy are for you.
Yeah.
It's to make you feel better. And it's your utility stuff. And so we work with kids at that point. And then when you go to the draft, right, you're going to go pro. Now you have a whole different bag of considerations, because that public eye in college is different than that public eye when you get to the pro level. And so you have to understand, when you're at that pro level, they will cut you if you decide you're going to drive your car that I told you not to buy to and from the nightclub that night, right? Get an Uber account. I tell you what, it's well worth it. Like to and from, you don't have to worry about much anything.
Right.
But it's you have to have the insurance, because when you have that party at your house and somebody slips and falls on the pool deck, right, they're suing you because they think you're rich Uncle Moneybags because you play for the Milwaukee Bucks. Well, you don't want that problem. And so instead, you get the right insurance, you get the right stuff around you, and you insulate yourself from a lot of that outside stuff. You have to realize that it's not because you're the greatest person in the world. It's because you have a freakish athletic ability and a work ethic to go along with it. The more work ethic you have, along with that athletic ability, means you're going to stick around longer. The guys that are there at early and stay late, those are the guys that get their pensions. The guys that decide they're going to go out to the nightclub and tell everybody that they, are a Philadelphia Philly, they're not going to last very long. I don't care who you are, right? You're not the guys that have the big fast cars also have a propensity to crash big fast cars. Instead, that guy that's driving the used truck to and from the ballpark every night, and he stays to lift after the game, he goes home, sleeps, right? Chicken and rice. Every athlete I know eats chicken and rice for every meal. And when you do that, you stick around a lot longer.
Yeah.
And that means you might make an extra $2 or $3 million that last year. Imagine post-tax, which is generally about half of that. You put $1 million that you probably didn't necessarily need into some sort of an investment account, and now you're not worried about your kid's college education, right? Now you're generating $80,000 a year in passive income that you might not actually need if you've invested the right way. And now that becomes that generational wealth that you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, man. What you're describing is true brand management, right?
Right.
And because when you start to get to that level and you're dealing with those sums of money, I mean, everyone is at you, and you need to think about yourself as an enterprise, as a business, even though how you got there was through your talent and your skills and your ability to be better than just everyone else around you. But the business side starts to come in and creep in, which, in any industry, that's going to be the case. So the ones that, can still maintain kind of their work ethic and, do their best to stay out of trouble, for lack of better words, like that trouble can be a number of different things.
Right.
But who understand that, they are a brand in a true sense, where it's like, I have to protect myself legally, financially, operationally, like a real company. That is, in many ways is the ultimate sign of, doing things the right way from just from a holistic standpoint. And it's not common. You keep me honest. It's not common for someone to have an advisor or we'll just say an advisor in their ear, speaking to them in this capacity to say, hey, I know I can handle your legal things or whatever it is that you have, but you need to consider X, Y, and Z. And I wouldn't be doing my job as someone who is a partner to you to not at least expose these areas to make sure that you're buttoned up, because at the end of the day, I do care about your sustainability. And who knows, like 2 months from now, you may have a career-ending injury. And then now what do? Like, the check's gone. But did you take the time to set up all the different things that you need to set up? And did you do it in a smart way and do it in a way that was, you were being advised by someone who really gives a damn about, your sustainability in the industry. So I really appreciate that perspective that you just offered around that.
Yeah. Well, and I think that one, it's just the right thing to do in my mind.
Yeah.
Because if I have knowledge that I'm keeping from you, because that's not my lane, well, it's different, because on a highway, there's all sorts of lanes, and you're going to come in and out of them depending on what's going on. And so I'm not a financial advisor at all. But if you bring me an investment deal, I'm going to tell you if I think it's good or bad.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to give you my honest opinion, whether it's the papers that I'm looking at, or if you say, hey, this guy wants me to put $1 million into a thing called fast food. I'm going to go, oh, that's great. Let's take a look at the franchise document. He goes, no, we're going to take on McDonald's. We're building our own. Yeah. Let's not do that. That's probably a bad idea. Right. And so it depends what lane you're in, but sometimes you just have different life experience, and that matters.
Yeah.
That oftentimes means we call somebody and go, hey, look, you're the tax person. What do you think? And that tax person might say, look, from a tax perspective, this doesn't make sense. And I might learn something out of that.
Yeah.
Right. And so for me, you just have to have that team of people around you that's willing to give you the honest truth. Because remember, with these athletes, who are going to go coach the next generation of athletes? Probably these people, when they first get released, they don't have something to do. They don't have a job. Typically they might, but generally they don't. So they're looking for their next passion. Oftentimes they're going to get out of the house because their significant other says, I need you out of here for a couple hours a day. Please do anything. They're going to go coach high school sports or a youth team. Well, they're the ones that are going to identify that next level of talent. And hopefully, if I've treated them the right way, they're going to call and say, hey, B, I got somebody for you.
Yeah.
You got to see this 11-year-old. He's got a great crossover. Great. What am I going to do for 7 years with this kid? Well, for our firm, we're going to talk to those parents immediately and say, hey, at 11, 12, 13, here's what you as a parent need to know about this process, so you can start sifting through the good, the bad, the ugly. Are we costing ourselves some opportunity money? Maybe. But the opportunity cost is so much higher if we don't even approach them. I want to talk to every athlete, everybody in the industry, because all the answers are at our fingertips now. If Google doesn't have it, ChatGPT will make up an answer, and it's probably pretty good, right?
Right.
And so all of the answers are here, but you're going to look to an expert to give you the actual answer and how to implement it.
Yeah.
So if we're going to give that out for free anyway on the internet, let's go ahead and do that, right now. I'll give you the cookbook to how to cook my favorite cheeseburger. You're still going to go to the restaurant that cooks your favorite cheeseburger to order it because they do it better than you anyway. It's the implementation that costs.
Yeah, for sure. I want to get your thoughts on NIL. You touched on it a little bit, and I think you were the first person when this first became a thing. You and I had a number of conversations around this, and I remember you telling me at the time, I mean, years ago now, you were like, "Yo, B, like this is going to be a big deal. This is only rolling out in a couple of states right now, but it's just only a matter of time where it's just going to be a universal thing." Now it's you can't follow any sport without someone dropping something about NIL. You can't look at anything related to college sports or anything, right, without it becoming a conversation. Did you know? Well, of course you knew it was going to get to this point, but if you had to kind of pinpoint or say, if I'm a betting man, like where this is headed, what would you call out? What would you say?
From here, like what do I see the next 5 or 10 years?
For sure. Yeah.
Great question. There's a case coming. I'm not going to get too early on you, but there's a case called House versus NCAA that's going through a settlement process. Probably by the time they listen to this, they may have already had the hearing. If that settlement goes through, it's going to fundamentally change everything by putting a salary cap basically on the athletic departments.
Sure.
But it's an antitrust violation. I don't expect anybody to understand what that is, but it's anti-competition. What we're going to see are schools that are going to pay players directly. And you don't have to like it as a fan. I understand why you don't like it, I guess. But it feels kind of like the old man yelling at the tornado, right? Tornado's still coming through. So just button down the hatches.
Yeah.
You're going to have student athletes getting paid. You're also going to have some of those athletes getting paid an exorbitant amount more money than, say, the backup punter. And you're going to have that disparity until you have unions in college sports. Here's the problem. It's hard enough to get grown adults to join a union in the pro sports. It's even harder when you're 18-year-old kids and you don't know anything about it. And now you want me to pay to be a member of this thing. I don't know about that. I just got this bag. You want me to dig in there and give you some of that? I don't know who you guys are.
No, thanks.
I think I'm doing just fine. Thanks. I think it's going to be hard, but now it's a recruiting thing. University of Georgia, they got to keep up with USC. They got to keep up with Clemson. They got to keep up with Florida State. That it's driving up the price. You're going to find colleges that are going to find ways to decrease that price.
Yeah.
And really, we're talking about two sports, football and men's and women's basketball.
Yeah.
The problem I see is these universities are a little short-sighted, all of them, because they're going to cut women's sports. They're going to cut Olympic sports. They're going to cut the cross-country team, the wrestling team, the field hockey. Well, that means you're going to have fewer people going to college. That's problematic for me. Now, don't get me wrong. I make a very good living working with men's and women's athletes at the very high end of the scale. But my sister was a gymnast. They'll probably keep gymnastics because they can figure out how to market it.
Yeah.
But they've never taken the opportunity to market cross country. I'm probably not going to watch cross country on TV, but I tell you what, there's a lot of distance runner, right? I mean, Hoka sells a lot of shoes, so I'm assuming there's a lot of runners out there. And when you have a market that is being underserved and undermarketed too, and you frankly just aren't even giving them the opportunity, it tells me that there's going to be a dynamic shift in the collegiate athletics landscape at some point where somebody, a business person, is going to go into a university and say, why can't we make $1 million a year off field hockey? And when the response is, well, of course you can't. It's field hockey. There's going to be a Michael Jordan of field hockey, and we're all going to know her name, whether we want to or not, right? But the second that you have that person that has that dynamic ability to connect with people online and be that personality type, I tell you what, that sport's going to blow up, as will lacrosse, as will all of these other sports that are very likely to get cut. So that way they can fund the men's and women's basketball teams and college football.
Yeah. I saw somebody recently. It was on a podcast. I think I was on IG or something. And I can't remember. It was one of the bigger shows. They were talking about this very same issue. And the way this guy framed it was NIL in the future is really going to turn collegiate sports into like the new version of the minor leagues at every level.
It already has. For the most part, it really has. The part that I'm afraid of, and this is, how many ripples are in the water here. But if you don't have collegiate cross country, your Olympic teams in the future are really going to suffer. And it's not the job of colleges to fund the Olympic movement. But same thing with the Olympic movement is they need to learn how to make money, generating money from their sports in order to continue to promote them, because the American dominance on the worldwide stage in sports goes away when you don't have, cross-country skiing as a collegiate sport. It's expensive. And we have great Olympians in all of these sports because we have so many opportunities for people to go to college at least a reduced rate and go ahead and just crush it. Well, if I can't go be a alpine skier, whatever it is, right, in college, I may just not do it because I have to pay my bills. Well, that stinks. Maybe field hockey, maybe soccer, whatever it is. You're going to have people that drop out and their parents aren't going to keep paying the club fees because, frankly, it's not worth it. Where's the payoff? And so you're going to have participation. A lot of sports drop off because there's no payoff. And that part really stinks because while I have my favorite sports, every sport is valuable at some level, and people just need to understand that.
Yeah. I love it, man. I love it. I know we're kind of getting close on time. One thing that I would love to just kind of hear you share is, and this is, again, the whole reason why I wanted to start this podcast, right, is to connect with people that I've been able to build really good relationships with, but do it in a way that's just been authentic. And like I mentioned at the beginning of this, you have been someone since from day one, like this guy's himself all the time. And I think people see that and know that. And again, I'm a true believer, and I really do feel like that is a huge proponent of your success and you just being able to connect with people. What would you say for anyone that's kind of listening to this, whether they're an up and coming athlete, whether they're an entrepreneur, a public personality, public figure, how would you communicate, or how would you say like the importance of just maintaining your authenticity and being yourself? Because you're going to get thrown a lot of different things. And the more that you can just kind of stay grounded in who you are, regardless of what's happening around you, in many ways, that is a thing that fuels your brand without you even trying, because people know when you're being fake. People know when, you're out for something that is, not in their best interest. People can sense those things. But I would love to just kind of get your perspective, because I know you've seen a lot of stuff. But I would just love to get your perspective and thinking around that.
Yeah. I have a hard enough time being myself, let alone trying to be somebody else that I think people want me to be, or whatever that effect is. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you turn yourself into a pretzel. All you do is end up in knots. And really all I look at is when somebody sees me on a Saturday or a Sunday, right, and I'm not at the office, although I'm probably kind of always working, in a good way. Like that work-life balance does not exist in my life. I mean,
tell me about it. Yeah.
People that are in my life, I'm friends with them, but I'm also doing work with them, right? The woman I'm dating, she works in the industry, right? So it can't turn that off. When we're having dinner, halftime we're talking about work stuff because we're both passionate about it. And you start looking at it, and some people think that that's terrible. Others are like, yeah, that's awesome. Because if I see a business colleague at the movie theater, I don't want to have to shy away and go, oh my gosh, I can't believe they're here. Did they see me?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I'm not going to go places and be a different person at work and not at work, because if I run into a business connection or a whoever at somewhere that what you think of me wouldn't be at, well, then that word gets around real fast.
Yeah, it does.
And if you're going to attract exactly what you're going to attract. So if your life is chaotic because you're trying to be two different people, who do you think you're going to attract? People that are going to be a little two-faced. They're not going to be honest with you. They're not going to be as transparent as you want. Maybe that's okay with you. If you want to chase the almighty dollar or you want to chase the cool factor, knock yourself out.
Yeah.
But for me, I don't get those chaotic clients. I don't, which is very strange in the sports world, that I don't think I have a client that cheats on their spouse, because one of my rules is if you have that proclivity, I'm not going to judge you, but I think you should probably see a different lawyer, because I'm probably dealing with your spouse or your family more than you during the season.
Yeah.
I don't want to lie to her. I don't want to tell your husband something and I know it's not true because you've asked me to do that. I can't keep your lies for you. I keep your secrets, but I can't keep your lies. And I'm just not going to be put in that position. Yeah. And so for me, I get a lot of really solid people. Sometimes a bad business deal comes across. We'll tell somebody why we think it's a bad deal for our client, and we'll just move on with that. But it's amazing how there's so many different kinds of people, even in a small industry such as sports, that I can be myself and have a whole room full of people I can do business with, and it doesn't matter, because I'll tell you what, Kenyon Martin and I are not the same person at all. We are polar opposites, and he has that group of people around him, right? He seems to be doing just fine, right? Gilbert Arenas and I, definitely different people. I know Gil a little bit, but we're not going to the same parties, right?
Yeah.
But Gil's doing quite well with his podcast. Good job, Gil.
Yeah.
Like, he's crushing it, but we don't deal with the same kind of people, and that's totally okay. And so there's room for everybody, especially once you get behind that velvet rope into the sports world. Now you look around, and you go, there's not that many people in here. Wow, I can kind of be myself. And you get that reputation. You better live up to your reputation, because it's really easy to take that slip and fall off of it, right? We've seen all sorts of guys do that. Seen all sorts of athletes that get in trouble, and you go, man, they're into that. Yeah. If you're into that, just be into that and be unabashedly yourself, and you're going to catch some heat for it, but everybody catches heat now. Instead, catch heat for something that you truly believe in. That's it.
There we go. We have it, man. As always, gym after gym, nugget after nugget. My brother, I appreciate the time. I know we got to do this again. We'll figure out some other time, because I know there's just much more that we can actually get into. But I want to be respectful of what you have going on there, because I know it's a lot that you're managing, man. So, lastly, before you go, where can people find you?
You can find me pretty much anywhere online. Leopoldus Laws. That's how you spell the last name. If you get close, there's only 8 of us in a country, so you type in Brandon Leopoldus, it'll pop up. But you can find me on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest place to connect with me. Otherwise, email's always good. Phone call. If you find my website, it's all the contact info is there. So any questions, anything that you just say, hey, let's figure out a way to talk to somebody in that space. I'm always happy to hop on the call and provide whatever insight that I can, point you in the right direction, make a connection for people.
There you have it. Brandon, again, appreciate it, sir.
Appreciate you.
Yeah, man. I always love when we can get together. I told you last time, I'm trying to figure out another date to make it out to LA, but we'll figure out something. Hopefully you make it to Atlanta sooner. So, but yeah, we'll work through all that, man. I appreciate the time.
Absolutely. Appreciate you, man.
All right, dude. See you.
See ya.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Heavy on Brand podcast, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification button. If you need more information on all things marketing and branding, check us out at thecarbonthread.com. Until next time, stay heavy.